What is up, my little pretties? It's your Mistress, the Queen of Lions here, and welcome to episode 38 of Shadows and Pretties. So today in this episode, we are going to be talking about a Disney movie, and we're also going to talk about the dark origin of this Disney movie, and that is Pocahontas. Now, Pocahontas, this Disney movie, is a lot more friendlier than the actual story behind Pocahontas. So I am going to talk about the actual Pocahontas story, which will be after I wrap up the Disney one. Well, basically explain what the Disney one basically is about, because some of you guys may notice remember the Disney one, some of you guys may not. But anyways, with that being said, we are going to basically begin that Pocahontas is a Native American princess. So this is the first Native American princess that Disney has had. I know this is related to Native Americans because Pocahontas is based on the actual real life human men of this. So, with that being said, I'm going to explain what this is about, and we're going to go on with the original, stories. So, of course, this is the sixth film produced and released during the Disney Renaissance period, which is another Disney animated feature film, which came out in June 16th, 1995. So, with that being said, we are going to begin with, we're going to begin with explain what the plot is about the story, and we'll go from there. So this is actually takes place in the 1600s. Now, this movie actually is based on based on the actual story of Pocahontas, but except they made it, more kid friendly, because the original story that I will tell eventually is not kid friendly or any shape or form. So, with that being said, I'm going to say right now, if you've seen Pocahontas, feel free to let me know in the comments below. Also, if you have not been able to see Pocahontas, you should really go check it out, as it's a pretty interesting movie. So, with that being said, people, sit back, relax, grab a snack, and let's dive into Pocahontas. Now, Pocahontas, the movie apparently is taking place around 1607. So in 1607, the Susan Consett sails from London to the New World, carrying English settlers from the Virginia Company. Along the way, Susan Consett is caught by the North Atlantic storm, and Captain John Smith, who basically dreams about having an adventure, saves a young, experienced crewmate, Thomas, from drowning. So as they approach the New World, the new settlers, including John, talk adventure, finding gold, fighting Indians, and potentially setting in the new land. So in the Powhatan village in North America, Pocahontas, a beautiful daughter of Chief Powhatan, fears about possibly wed to Coconum, and a brave warrior who she sees to be too serious as of her own spirited, free personality. Powhatan gives Pocahontas her mother's necklace as a present, so Pocahontas, along with her friends, the raccoon, the hummingbird, visit Grandma Willow, a spirit-talking willow tree, and speaks of the dreams and following the spinning arrow and her confusion to where her life would be. Then her grandmother then alerts Pocahontas to arriving to the English, so the voyage's greedy leader, Governor Ratfickle, of course, who seeks gold as his plan to that bring him wealth and status, and has his Jamestown built in a wood and clearing, immediately has the crewman dig for gold. John departs from the bad guy's side to explore the wilderness. He eventually encounters Pocahontas and then quickly bond, fascinated by each other's worlds. And of course, they end up falling in love. Yeah, basically every Disney princess movie always has like a guy and a girl falling in love. Guy meets girl, girl meets guy, and they both fall in love. Well, most of them get their happy endings, in Disney movies, but the actual stories, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But we're gonna explain more about this concept. So, basically, despite Pocahontas' orders to stay away from the Englishmen after Cocodium and the other warriors engaged them in a fight, meanwhile Miko meets Percy, Ratfish's pet pug, and it becomes the bane of the existence. When John tells Pocahontas that he and his men are here to find gold, she tells them that there is no gold, and Pocahontas introduces John to Grandmother Willow and avoids the other crewmen. But however, Pocahontas' best friend Nicomoma discovers her relationship with John and warns Cocodium. And then that's when Radfishi also learned about John's encounters with Pocahontas and angrily warns John against sparing the natives when he comes to the pain of the deaf. Well, this is actually when, the story does get a little bit dark. I noticed that in this movie, this is about Native Americans and of how badly they were mistreated back then. I really feel bad for those people. Like, that's why we had Indian reservation areas, in certain places of the world, so then natives can be happy and be free, more or less. I also took a class based on this, so you guys could probably understand that, I was fascinated by this kind of stuff, as the concept is really good and well made. So basically, later, John and Pocahontas meet with Grandmother Willow and to plan to bring peace to the Kansas and the tribe. However, John and Pocahontas share a kiss while Cogodium and Thomas, sent by Resville to spy on John, witness from afar. Of course, they ended up having like a battle and attempts to try to kill John, but John intervenes with his musket and kills Cocodium, who destroys Pocahontas' necklace in the process. So, John orders Thomas to leave before the tribesmates arrives and capture John and retrieve Cocodium's body. In range at the Cocodium's death, Pocahontas declares war on the English, beginning with John's execution in the sunrays. Yeah, very messed up and stuff. So I could definitely say this movie was definitely messed up at this certain part in the movie. But you know what? I remember watching this as a kid, and I can really understand, why this is based on the Pocahontas. But I understand that Disney wanted to make this as child friendly as possible, so they can make it so it's easy for kids. So Thomas reaches Jamestown safely at night to warn the English settlers about John's capture, and then the governor then rallies up his men during the battle. During this is an excuse to annihilate the tribe and compass. Pocahontas realizes John's compass is a spinning arrow of her real-life encounter, which leads her to destiny. So when morning comes, Powhatan takes his tribe and John to the cliff, overlooking the declared for execution, while meanwhile the governor leads the armed Consans right to the cliff to Powhatan's warriors. Just as Powhatan is about to execute John, Pocahontas intervenes and finally convinces him to end the fight between two groups is to spare John's life. So everyone accepts gratefully, and John is released when the governor orders the men to attack and they refuse in a range. So the governor ended up fires a musket at Powhatan, but John shields him and gets hit instead. So the settlers lived at there, and they turned on him and arrest him for hurting trying to hurt the tribe, or at least, yeah. So John is nursed back to health, but he must return to England for further treatment to survive. So the governor was sent back to England to face punishment for his crimes against the settlement. So John asks Pocahontas to come with him, but she chooses to stay with her tribe to keep her peace. And Miko and Percy, now friends, give Pocahontas her mother's necklace completely fixed. And John leaves without Pocahontas, but with Powhatan's blessing to return anytime he likes. So the film ends with Pocahontas standing on top of a cliff, watching the necklace watching as the ship carrying John apart. So that was actually a really good story. Like, all the characters in here that are just amazing. I like how, the development of this. So the development of this was slowly beginning when Aladdin and Lion King, around the time where it was starting to be well developed. It was sometime in the early 90s is when Pocahontas was slowly in development. So they eventually finish it time after some heated discussion and some stuff that they had to do and all that. They actually had to do a lot of concept when it comes to that. So eventually Pocahontas was then a pretty good concept, when even though it was pretty interesting, but it was actually really amazing when they finally got to finish it. So, okay. With that being said, I could definitely say, when I look at the wiki, they actually won for the best original song, which was Colors of the Wind, which is a really amazing song that they actually won for that. Is that the Colors of the Wind song is absolutely amazing, really well done, and absolutely amazing. I do like how the voice actors did a good job in this, and I do like how the concept itself was actually fit out very well. despite the fact that the concept was a little dark at times, but it's still a pretty good concept with this movie of Pocahontas. So, okay, now that I talked about the Disney movie, I'm gonna go on to the actual story behind Pocahontas, and I'm gonna say right now it's probably sad. We're just going to say why it's sad. Well, let's just say it gets sad later on. So, we are going to explain the original story. So, Pocahontas is based on the real woman who was born around 1596, but she unfortunately dies in 1617, which she was just the daughter of Potwan, one and the paramount chief. So, with that being said, let's go on with the early life. So, the early life is that when Pocahontas' birth year is unknown, but historians estimate that it had been again around 1596, when basically Smith described meeting Pocahontas in the real spring of 1608 was when she was a child at 10 years old. So in a 1960 letter, she described her as he described her as she was like this age, but as a child at around 12 or 13 years of age. So when Pocahontas is the daughter of the chief Powhatan and paramount chief, so in the alliance about that was going on. So, of course, in Tidewater in Virginia, her mother's name and origin is unknown, but was probably lowly stats. So, of course, Henry Spilsman of Jamestown lived in Rampohan and interperior with the notice so that's where the paramount chief wives mainly gave birth, and she was placed with the support origin supported there. So the paramount chief found another husband, but however, is a little unknown about Pocahontas' mother. It might have been theorized that she died during childbirth, which that is quite possible to say. So, what happens in the Pocahontas story is that she ends up meeting, well, you could definitely say John Smith, just like the movie, but except that, Pocahontas then gets captured by these men, and they basically forced her to marry her. So, of course, with Pocahontas, the first husband was Kodacum, but of course the brother Padawick theorizes Japadows that Kodacum was killed by the colonists after his wife's capture in 1613. So that's basically what happened first. So Kodacum's identity and location was their existence and had been widely debated amongst other scholars for centuries. So we could definitely see this is actually a pretty interesting thing. So during her stay, Pocahontas meets John on Rolfe's English wife Sarah, and her child had died on the way to Virginia after a shipwreck. So, with that being said, let's just say that Pocahontas accepted Christian's faith and taken to a batsman named Rebecca, in a long governor requesting permission from her. And he expresses his love for Pocahontas and feeling that he would be saving her soul, and that he wrote that he was. So, of course, Pocahontas ends up being in England, to be in her marriage to Rolfe, but it was also so seen that, well, basically the success of Virginia colony, that's when more stuff began happening. There's even parts of it that she actually end up, doing certain stuff that been going on, and I could definitely say right now however, when Pocahontas had gone through like a lot of stuff, kind of like how the movie went, except those movies that except the movie fee from Disney actually made it more friendlier, but they actually made a very good concept. So of course, eventually, while spending her time in England, Pocahontas eventually tells Smith that she and her tribe have fought him dead, but her father told him to seek him because your countrymen will lie so much. So we're going on to the death. Oh my goodness. Well, the death of Pocahontas is definitely going to be a very good, well, not very good, but kind of sad. So it's kind of sad, it's a sad story. So I will be talking about this sequel, the Disney sequel, in a little bit in this. I'm not going to give out too much information, but I would basically just explain what's basically the concept of it. So, okay. So the death of the actual Pocahontas was in March of 1617, where Pocahontas aboard the ship to return to Virginia with Rolfe, but they only sailed as far as Gravesend in the river, and that's when Pocahontas became gravely ill. She had been taken ashore and died eventually at the age of 21. It is not known what caused her death, but theories range from pneumonia, smallpox, tuberculosis, or to her being poisoned, which she said she died, all must die, but it's enough for her child to live. So Pocahontas' funeral took place around March 21st, 1617, in the parish of the St. George's Church gravesend, and her grave is known to be underneath the church's this chapel, but through that the church has been destroyed by the fire in 1727. To be exact date is unknown, but her memory is honored by her life-size bronze statue at the St. George's Church. So if you do go to, basically Kent, which is a southeast country in England, you will definitely see Pocahontas' statue. So her legacy: Pocahontas had a son named Thomas Rolfe, who was born during January 16th, January 1615, and of course Jane Poyce had a daughter named Jane Rolfe, who was born in Virginia. So that's actually the legacy of, Pocahontas. So after her death, it was becoming romantic preparations that were pronounced of Pocahontas, which she and Smith are frantically portrayed as romantically involved. So that's basically what the legacy and basically what's going on in it. So there have been other documentaries and even movies discussing Pocahontas. Eventually, the Walt Disney but of course we do have the Pocahontas live action. One is the Pocahontas the Legend, which is another one, not a Disney movie. But of course we get the Disney Pocahontas, which is actually a pretty good film. Okay, now we're going to talk about the sequel. So the sequel of this is basically, Journey to the New World. Now, this is kind of based on a bit from the, first Pocahontas, even though it's to take a few years later. I actually found this sequel to be okay for what it is. So we're going to basically begin with this. So, of course, John is then later ambushed by a group of soldiers who waited for his arrest and presumed dead, and resulting with the governor lied to King James. So Smith is the traitor from the first film and plots to declare war against Poton and nation to get a hold of gold that he believes to have processed. So, of course, Pocahontas, Paul Twin's daughter, mourns for John Smith's death. Of course, that's what she fought, but is eventually be able to move on. So when John soon arrives, greeted the English civilians who are settled in Jamestown, and a curious Pocahontas, Rolfe eventually speaks to Poton, but he refuses to accompany him by the England. So Pocahontas goes into her father's steed, believing that she could bring peace between the two nations, but Poton sends a bodyguard just to accompany Pocahontas. So, of course, in England, Rolfe leads Pocahontas in his mansion to meet with King James and Queen Anne. But James refuses to meet Pocahontas despite Rolfe's pleas. So, with that being said, more stuff has been going on. But, we get to see her, Pocahontas, and John Smith together. So, in this. So, that's actually a pretty interesting concept with the movie. Now, I'm not going too much into detail, not explaining everything about what happened, because, to be completely honest, and I'm gonna say right now, the sequel is okay for what it is, but I really prefer the first one. The plot is pretty good, even though it's not going 1 to 100 with certain, random things that happened. But the end of the movie is just basically when, basically what happens is Pocahontas and they appear at the voyage and they admitted of loving each other. So Smith then appears to implore Pocahontas to accompany in his new journeys for the world. So, of course, she and Smith unfortunately part ways again as friends, but that's just basically what happened in the sequel. So, most of the voice actors are back for the most part, even though this production only occurred 2 years and stuff. So I'm gonna say that I really found this movie to be pretty decent, despite the fact that there were a few controversies of the second one, because a lot of people in Disney community really liked the first Pocahontas movie, and they actually found the real Pocahontas to be rather amazing. And they actually have to say that even though Pocahontas 2 wasn't the best Disney sequel, the better ones I've seen are, The Little Mermaid 2 and even The Lion King 2, Simba's Pride. This one is actually a pretty decent sequel at that. It is okay if you guys don't like my opinion, which I can highly respect your opinion, As long as you respect my opinion, though. Now, with that being said, did you guys like the dark story of Pocahontas? Well, probably most of you didn't because it was sad, but most of you guys probably liked it because it was a good history behind it. Did you guys like the Disney movie? Did you guys like the sequel? Did you guys not like any of this stuff? Also, what we have done personally to make this movie a lot better, the first one and the actual story, and the second one a lot better. Leave me know what your thoughts are down in the comment section down below. As I'm the Queen of Lions, thank you so much for watching today's episode, and if you happen to be brand new here on this channel, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe because I make brand new videos every single day. And don't forget to ring the notification bell to when I upload, so then that way you guys won't miss an upload. So, with that being said, I will be seeing you all in the next video. Peace out, and I'll catch you all next time.